The great car market reset is here, and it's now in 2024. We never thought we'd see legacy manufacturers like Volkswagen having to shut down plants and lay off workers, Stellantis having to potentially part out some of their brands, Ford losing money on the sale of every single vehicle, Nissan closing doors, CFO hitting the road, and CEO taking pay cuts. Doesn't matter where you look, even Toyota is impacted by this entire industry shift, and what the market is promising now is instability, volatility, unsure. You don't know today if you're buying a car that will be here tomorrow. I mean, there's a lot of examples, and I'm going to share some of those examples of some of the biggest, ugliest car manufacturers today that may not be here next year or the year after, or they might be gobbled up or consumed by other brands. Things are tough, they're rough. Cost of living crisis is eating everybody. Less people are buying, and the only way a lot of these cars are selling is through aggressive incentives, as we're seeing a lot of some of these price point pushes. 7.3% is now the percentage of a transaction now that has gone up to average transaction prices of $48,000. And a lot of these vendors are eliminating all of their lower price point vehicles. Mitsubishi getting rid of the Mirage. That was the only vehicle under $20,000, with the flavor going to a lot of vendors now trying to pitch their electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. All this added technology is pushing customers out the door. Customers can't afford it. Buyers don't have the money for this increasing levels of cost in these manufacturers of these lot of vehicles. Let's just break this down. I mean, talk about some of the legacy brands. I want to share some of these because this is getting downright ugly. Things are happening in the manufacturing sector that we've never seen before. I mean, not at this scale. Sure, you've seen brands like Pontiac go away. You've seen brands like Saturn go away. Yeah, these are little one-offs. But those usually were the writing on the wall, and quite often they were pretty predictable. But what we're talking about are major legacy brands. I mean, start with Volkswagen. They're actually closing potentially 3 plants. There's all kinds of pushback. They're talking thousands of workers getting laid off. There's all kinds of disputes now because the unions in Europe are very strong, and there's all kinds of usually clauses in some of their agreements that hold everybody accountable. And usually the workers have a lot better protection. But if there's no buyers for their cars, that means no cars are going out the door. That means you don't need workers. Something has to break. And Volkswagen is feeling it more than almost anybody today. With all of the losses that they're seeing, prices are definitely going. Obviously, prices have nowhere to go but down, but they're not. You would think that prices would go down, but prices continue to rise. A lot of unfortunate moves on Volkswagen part was ill-fated. It was a bad decision. In my own personal opinion, we're seeing Volkswagen decided to go all in with the EVs, and they got in a little too much, a little too soon. And now they're giving up on some of their ICE vehicles. The quality's not there on products like Jettas and some of their full-size SUVs, and people aren't buying them. The product line, the quality's not there, and they've gone all in with electric vehicles, but nobody's buying them. Sales of EVs are down in Europe, and that's impacting Volkswagen in a big way. It's not good. But the VAG group we're seeing is also Porsche. You know, Porsche was going to go pure electric with their Macan, their Porsche Boxster, as well as a lot of their brands. They were going to shift entirely electric. Well, the latest news this week is they've elected not to. And so even Porsche, as part of the Volkswagen Audi group, has decided to provide an internal combustion version of the new restyled Macan and the Boxster. And they're going to create a new project line that does include internal combustion drivetrains. Again, just after a year earlier, they were talking about they were going all electric. Okay, Audi, same struggles, same problems. Their e-trons, e-tron GTs are not selling. Nobody wants them. And for the odd one that does sell, they're aggressively incentivized. So they're barely selling, they're struggling, and people aren't buying them. And then the odd person that wants to get out of it through either a lease or walk away from it in a year or 2 years, they're finding that depreciation has literally beat them down. You know, you're seeing vehicles that are now worth about 50% of what they were originally. So there's no question the VAG, Volkswagen Auto Group, is struggling right now. Mercedes, I didn't even realize this, but their stock prices are taking a nosedive. Prices are not what the consumer ordered. I mean, I was in the dealership the other day and I saw prices for vehicles that are absolutely gone ballistic. What happened to a $50,000 C-Class or $45,000 C-Class? Now they're $80,000, $75,000 for a decked out C300. What has happened? Even some of their lower, the GLBs, are now up on that $72,000, $75,000 Canadian. I've never seen that. These vehicles were $40,000 2 or 3 years ago. Where have they gone wrong? They've also lost a lot of their V8 customers, and nobody wants the brand anymore. It's overpriced. It's a facade of what it used to be. The quality's not there. People aren't buying them. Nobody wants a V8 powered an AMG product that used to be V8 and now is a turbocharged 4-cylinder with a little hybrid. So they've missed the reading on the wall. They clearly missed the target audience. Nobody's buying Mercedes, and it shows. You know, their profits are down. Their market share is down, certainly, as well. Their stock prices have gone down drastically. So Mercedes is also feeling the burn. BMW, not doing all that well. They've come out with some new models, but we know some of their electric vehicles have not been selling at all. And Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz has been, or BMW, has been struggling as well with the sales of everything. So they've been struggling. Now Ford, okay. Ford's saying, well, we're selling more products, they're moving more metal, but a lot of it is, you know, lower price point vehicles like the Maverick, because a lot of their F-150s weren't selling and the sales were declining. Well, also, they've seen some increased sales on their electric vehicles that all came in part due to heavy incentives. But Ford also recognized that every one of their brands every one of their makes, I guess, or models specifically in their electric segment, for example, the Mustang Mach-E or the Lightning, have been grossly incentivized. This year, they're slashing prices off the base price of the Lightning, and we've seen major incentives on the Mustang Mach-E. So they're saying literally they're losing 6 figures on the manufacturing side of creating these electric vehicles. So the bleeding can only go on so long, and Ford is struggling. They also recognized when the CEO went and spent some time in a Chinese electric vehicle that they openly admitted they don't even know how they can compete with the Chinese market. The Chinese electric vehicles are better, more reliable, easier to use, they're easy, and yet they're much more cost effective. So that doesn't leave these legacy manufacturers in a good spot, none of them, who are trying to compete with the Chinese market. And that's over in Europe, the European makes, but that's the North American makes as manufacturers as well. Okay, so what else can go wrong? Well, GM's had a pretty solid year. They're selling more electric vehicles. They're also looking at cranking up prices. We're seeing they're trying to get into Formula One racing now too. So clearly there's some ups and downs and some instability. GM's been okay, holding on for dear life, but Nissan hasn't been doing so well. That's right. We've just heard this week the CFO decided to resign, call it quits. When the chief financial officer walks away from a lucrative job, that's telling you something. That tells you everything you need to know. The CEO has taken major pay cuts and he looks to be going down with the proverbial ship. Nissan's not selling vehicles. And the ones that they are selling are, the lower price point vehicles. And it's not because Nissan vehicles aren't competitively priced. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused in this. We have some of the other competition like Stellantis we'll get to in a moment. But where Stellantis has really grossly overpriced a lot of their vehicles like Jeeps and some of their Dodge products we'll talk about here shortly, Nissan really hasn't done that. Their pricing isn't grossly exaggerated, but it's a combination of nothing fresh. They've sort of let the GTR die. That was one of their flagship vehicles that's sort of gone away. The Titan has lost interest. A lot of their vehicles have lacked reliability with that CVT transmission, just keeps dragging. It's like an anchor, keep dragging around, just keeps dragging along. And reliability has just been a nemesis for Nissan. Now finally, because of lacking and lackluster inventory and the types of products they're selling, there's just more exciting inventory out there. Now the Area, sure, they had their attempt at electric vehicle, but it's so highly priced, nobody's buying. Other than that, they don't have a lot to offer for hybrids and electric vehicles. And they're competing now with a strong emerging market. I mean, look at Toyota and Honda. They're coming out. They're trying to create new products, new exciting products. Now, it seems like Nissan really has nowhere to go because they're talking, there's rumors right from the top and insiders are saying 12 to 14 months is all they're going to be able to hold on for dear life with their current inventory or with their current financial status. I mean, 99% profit loss in the first half of 2024. Yeah, that's a pretty good indication that all their money was going into just staying alive. Incentives, trying to push products out, 0% for 5 years, doing whatever it takes to keep their vehicles selling. But it's clearly not enough. And unless they have an anchor investor, which there are conversations already behind closed doors that Honda may be willing to step up. Renault is backing off and reducing the amount that they invest in Nissan. Nissan's scrambling. They don't have the money to support longevity. They clearly are in a tough spot right now. And with that said, I mean, they're really going with a Hail Mary and hoping that Honda is able to pick up the slack. Now, we can see that Honda, Toyota, Nissan, the trifecta, 15, 20 years ago, they were direct competitors, all slamming for equal market share. But we've seen Toyota take off. Honda has sort of struggled. They've taken off. But Nissan's fallen off the cliff. What we could, in fact, see is a market that is shifting, one that some brands are going to be dying completely, and there's a risk of many brands going away. Nissan could be one. There's other examples of brands that could just be gobbled up by other brands and just the name vaporizes, or it becomes a sub-brand. And again, Nissan seems to come to mind, as well as many of the Stellantis products. Every single brand out there is struggling right now. Very few of them are really thriving. I mean, think about Stellantis. What's been going on over there? Very kindly, CEO Carlos Tavares was asked, or more or less implied and inferred, that he resigned. And he's resigned this week. And it's unfortunate for him, and I'm sure he got his big paycheck on the way out the door. But the door actually hit him really hard on the way out. So, I mean, you take it for what it's worth. But there was a dispute with him and the senior board members about how to run the business. And they did double down. They went ultra hard. We saw with the chip shortage back in 2021, a lot of vendors realized that they can put a lot of, these chips where they had to sort of segregate and decide, okay, do I put it here? Do I put it here? Because they couldn't put it in everything. So they started realizing, why would we put it in this cheap car with $1,000 price point? Why don't we put it in this high price point vehicle and we can make $6,000, $7,000 on that vehicle? So they were rationing these chips, putting them in the higher price point vehicles, and realizing we don't care about the entry-level buyers anyway. They're not here. And if they have the money, they'll step into the higher price point stuff. That's cool. We're good. But instead, they were catering more to people that were either well-heeled, had the money, or were willing and dumb enough to take on an 84-month loan to pay for some of these overpriced trash cars. Like some of these we've seen, Wagoneers and Rams and a lot of these products from Jeep, Ram, Dodge have all been escalated because Stellantis thought they were going to hit while the iron was hot. And they were going to try to crank up prices when people were willing to pay these prices. People were paying market adjustment fees of $10,000 or $15,000, $20,000. And Stellantis saw that. But they doubled down and they went a little too hard. And when there was a shortage of inventory about all other brands, they went double, triple down over time to create more inventory to put them out to the dealer lots. But it backfired because by the time those vehicles actually hit the truck, hit the assembly line, hit the truck, wound up on the dealer lots, the market started to turn. There was more inventory by other brands. Naturally, more chips started to evolve. People started having choice, and a lot of these vehicles became less palatable, and the prices were now stuck way too high. Now that left Stellantis with a lot of inventory. Dodge, the Durango's it's an obsolete, ancient, aging product. The Hornet is basically an Alfa Romeo rebadged, overpriced. People weren't interested. I've even seen a $55,000 Jeep Compass. How did we get here? Because people were paying this. And it's the buyers that were entirely to blame for this. It really was. These dealers were greedy. The banks were greedy because the banks were also lending money to people that probably shouldn't have been lent to. But everybody was sort of in this together, and it was a really bad market and a bad storm and a set of conditions that led to people who were willing to overspend, banks that were willing to lend the money out, and manufacturers that were like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's play ball. And so they were cranking up prices, throwing market adjustment fees. Now we're even seeing brands like Toyota. Toyota's been struggling. And don't kid yourself. I've been seeing prices. I've heard even recently the latest 4Runner was billed at a much higher number. It's taking a significant jump. I was talking to a Toyota dealer here the other day. He called out and he said, "Hey, I heard you were still interested in, or you were interested in a 4Runner," because I was in there about a year ago sniffing around. They didn't have a lot of inventory. And I sort of walked away and I sort of forgot about it. But these people have been trying to cold call me or hot call me for the last, weeks, months. And I've been more or less just, trying to dodge their calls because honestly, I'm not, I look at these prices and it's an insult. All of these vehicles. It's a true insult to our to their integrity, to our intelligence. And so they reached out and said, "You know what? We have the new model coming in, the new 4Runner." I'm like, "I'm not interested." I heard they were $100,000 or pushing 100 grand Canadian for a new 4Runner. I mean, how did we get here, everybody? How did we get here? But also Toyota struggle with some quality challenges. They're still trying to shake this issue with the 3.4s. That to a new twin turbo, it's impacting the LX600 Lexus, it's impacting Toyota Tundras, and they've also had some challenges with programming and their, in some of their electronics. Their Tacoma's had issues with the new gearbox, both autos and manuals. They've had issues with the 2.4s as well, and it just feels like the quality is lost, and a lot of customers are losing their faith in both Toyota and Honda. Honda's another one. That 3.5 just keeps unraveling, peeling back layers of the onion. The conversation about bad engine issues. Just when they thought they were out of the woods with that 1.5 turbo and they had all those oil and fuel problems and dilution issues, then all of a sudden the 3.5 creeped in. That was one of their tried and true tested engines. Had been wonderful for years. They used it in a bunch of Acuras like the MDX. It was in a lot of Hondas, the Odyssey, you name it. I mean, pretty much everything, the Ridgeline. And that 3.5 now is coming out with more and more updates to these recalls where they're having rod bearing and engine failures and catastrophic issues. And NHTSA has really got them by the collar and shirt and cuff here. So it feels like Honda, Toyota, they're all struggling. And remember, with recalls comes with dollars out. It's not just a reputational impact, and reputation can hurt them financially, but it's actually a financial obligation now. They're forced, their feet to the fire to fix these problems. And when you're changing out engines on, Honda's changing out engines on Toyotas, and Toyota had over 100,000 engines to swap out on the Tundras and so on. That's a significant amount of money, not just for the parts, but the labor, the installation, and of course everybody else's time. People to book in the time to book these, schedule this in. It's costing everybody a lot of money, and it's costing you, the consumer, time to book your time off work or drive it down to the dealership and have your vehicle. A lot of these vendors aren't offering up loaners, so now it's going to cost you other money for rentals. The market is in absolute turmoil right now. Every brand is struggling. Some of the Korean products, they're just getting out of the woods here with trying to, salvage what was left of their reputation. Hyundai and Kia, with a lot of their, the rod bearing issues and some of their engine failures, engine fires, that, very much a reputational issue. And while they're transitioning into their electric space, sales are dropping. So that's not helping them a lot either. The consumers are pretty much done with the electric market. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these manufacturers saying, well, wait a minute, we better hold off and slow things down. But in the meantime, they're all shooting themselves in the foot. Because even the likes of Ford have given up all of their, more cost-effective vehicles. The Fusion's gone. GM's gotten rid of the Camaro. They're getting rid of the Malibu. And quite honestly, that's leaving expensive SUVs, hybrids, electric vehicles, half of which nobody wants. Trucks are priced out of the market. I'm seeing pickup trucks now at $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. And if you're getting into diesels with the extras, and you're putting the paint protection film and all the extras on there and taxes, you're at $130,000 to $150,000 Canadian to get into a diesel. So, I mean, how did we get here? How did we get here, and where is it going to go from here? Well, we got here because I kind of alluded. A lot of these vendors are struggling, and a lot of them are on the verge of going under. Really, literally, it's that serious. So we got here a few reasons. The perfect storm. We talked about chip shortages, rationing, putting them in higher price point vehicles, got customers into higher price point vehicles because the lower volume, the volume stuff wasn't there, and the dealers are no longer concerned with buying volume. They are selling volume. They wanted to sell profit, not volume. And so this is initially where it started. But the customers were entirely accepting of that. So customers were paying market adjustment fees. Customers were paying more for a lot of these price hikes. Customers weren't negotiating. A lot of these shortages and the inventory shortages meant customers were willing to just pay whatever. And this is part of the problem. But this has gone on and on. Now, the catalyst to this is the banks. And the banks have been willing to lend out and extend loan terms to riskier buyers. They've lowered their threshold for a couple of years there. Got people in there that probably shouldn't have been buying, but they were buying. And, in long loan terms, like 7 years, 84 months. Now, repossessions, as a result, we're seeing repossessions have risen. Repossessions are up big time. We're closely infringing on that 8 to 10% on subprime buyers. And, it's all just a perfect storm. More of that inventory is going to hit the market. Used cars, we're going to see more in the auctions. We see these influxes in auctions. But it's a sad place, but it's just more add-ons to the cost of living crisis. And people are making decisions whether they can afford a new car and whether they can afford to eat. Because we've seen, rising inflation rates. We've seen rising interest rates, although they have stabilized lately with a couple of reductions in basis points. Less people are making the decision to buy new cars. And now it appears that all these manufacturers are dealing with what was a pool of buyers like this, or a pool of buyers like this. And now these people are getting more fussy. And they also don't want the electric cars. They want, things that are more affordable. And these vendors they're finding the struggles. That, this transformation to an EV market is holding a lot of these vendors in a really tight spot. They're not prepared for it. The quality isn't there. And honestly, it's creating the perfect storm once again. And it's a serious crisis that we're in right now in 2024. I feel like I was shopping for a car a year ago, and I've looked at the prices and I've watched them creep up even within the last 6 months. And I've pretty much taken a backseat choice and decision not to buy right now. I'm waiting this one out. And I think a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines waiting for prices to change. So what does it mean for the future going forward? I think what we're going to see is groups like Stellantis. I truly believe this. We're going to see some of the brands get further trimmed out. We're going to see some of the brands, they're going to have to get back down to more affordable vehicles. They're going to have to cost cut. You're probably going to find some more price point vehicles slowly enter the market. You're going to find vehicles that are more basic. I mean, we're seeing more basic cars. Honda's got a very basic looking car, but it's not available in the North American market. So I think what you're going to start to see is a slow transition to lower price point vehicles again. But unfortunately, you're also going to see this continuation to the EV segment, and they have no choice right now. The way the regulators and the governments are pushing, we're going to see this continuing development and cost increases on the high end of the market. But I think what we're going to see are trimming out of some of these vendors. Stellantis is a huge one at risk. They have how many different brands within the Stellantis organization? Some of the big North American ones, of course, that we're all aware of: Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, of course, Alfa Romeo, Maserati. Some of these brands are all kind of in that, and some of them aren't selling them. And some of them we know in 2025 are eliminating some of these models from the North American market. They're just not selling. So I think there's a huge risk for some of these brands literally closing their doors or being consumed. I mean, look at Jaguar. They're actually having to totally rebrand. They're pretty much eliminated their ICE, and they're in a bit of a hiatus right now, trying to figure out what their next plan of attack is. Yeah, they got this new model type 00. It looks very intriguing, but their new marketing campaign seems to be one that's very controversial and very Bud Light, if you will. And so where's that leave Jaguar? Really splitting the line and saying, like, we're making a decision to follow one side or the other. And so the future for companies like Jaguar are very up in the air. Range Rover, the whole JLR group, Land Rover group, is very much at risk right now. High prices, unreliability, and the instability in the market and people making other choices. Chinese market crashing in the door here soon. The way it looks could put a lot of these in a world of hurt. So I think, Stellantis, we already spoke. It could be a trimming out. Nissan could be gobbled up by another vendor. We've already heard Honda might consume Nissan. That is a very distinct possibility. Mitsubishi's trying to worm their way in there as well as a collaborative effect to try to get, the advancement of the EV marketplace. So there could be all kinds of collaborations, and I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot more of these mutual purchases, a lot more of these collaborations. We're going to see more market share shared within multiple brands, and they're all going to sort of take a piece. They're all going to share in sort of the ownership capacity within different brands. What you're going to have, like, in my personal opinion, Nissan could be consumed by, like I said, not just the Hondas. There could be other brands kind of all blended in there. Renault, you could have other makes take it over. Some of the other exotics, we always talk about the mainstream stuff. What about the exotics? We've seen this over years. I mean, Lamborghini, for example, we've seen that get handed around a few times, and currently part of, the VAG group, that could get tossed somewhere. With the VAG group struggling, they're going to look at shedding costs any which way they can. And car manufacturers that are more of a chic, I don't know, the margins are quite substantial, but the costs are quite substantial there too. And the volume of sales are down on those vehicles, and exotics aren't selling that hot right now either. So this really leaves the entire market in a real state of instability. And right now we are currently witnessing one of the most chaotic, catastrophic reset times in the automotive sector. Right now, third quarter, going in fourth quarter of 2024, we've never seen anything of this magnitude. Yes, we've seen the odd one-offs. We've never seen the entire market literally on the verge of going bust, with thousands of layoffs across the organizations, amalgamation. We're seeing CEOs getting fired. We've seen all kinds of massive levels of recalls because of quality challenges. Things we've never seen. This is a true challenge in the market and the industry that we've seen today. Hold on tight. If you are looking for some good deals, trust me, as we round out the year into 2025, you probably will be finding some really desperate and aggressive vendors and dealers trying to sell their inventory. Especially look at the older 24 models going out. You're probably going to find some amazing deals. Don't let them talk you into nonsense. Don't let them try to make you believe that they have something special. They don't. There's nothing on the market today that is worth any more than the sum of their parts. Just go in there, sharpen your pencils, and try to get the best deal possible. They are willing to negotiate, trust me. And those that aren't, screw them. Walk away, go somewhere else. Trust me, we don't need them. They need us. Well, with all of that said, right there, what a lot of buyers are doing, just fixing their old junk. And right there, I'll give you an example of what the cheapest Mercedes SUV on the market is today. That's why people are deciding to keep their old junk. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.